I'm Jim Collison, live from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Gallup offices in India. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on November 24th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you do have questions during the live webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. And when you're looking down there, you may not be logged in yet. Bottom left-hand corner, it says log in. Click that. Start a guest account. Just put your name in the where it'll say guest and a number. Put your name in there and sign in for us. No account necessary to be created. We'd love to have you. That's your best way to get questions into the program. If you're listening to the recorded version, or if you have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can of course send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. or use the contact form that's right there on the page, and many of you do. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center. That's just gallupstrengthcenter.com for all your coaching resources and Strength Finder training needs. You can also catch the video and now both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. Put it on your phone and take it with you, including all our mobile apps are available for you. If you can't remember your top 5, we have a mobile app for that. Everything is available, all the links on our coaches blog. Just go to coaching.gallup.com. Pooja Luthra is our host today. She works as an advanced consultant with Gallup out of our Delhi office. Pooja, I'm sorry you're not feeling as well today, but it's always great to see you. Welcome to another Call to Coach.
Thank you, Jim. It's nice to be here, and I will right off the bat apologize for the nasal voice. It's the cold in Delhi, which you of course call delightful weather there. It's slightly cold for us here. But anyway, welcome everyone. It's been quite a while since we've been here, and I apologize for the gap that's happened in between. But we will more than make up for that, because the guest that we have today with us, her name is Deepika, and she's a learning and development professional for over 25 years, and she currently leads the learning and transitions function for Accenture here in India. Manages learning solutions for more than 140,000 employees here. And Accenture, as most of us would probably know, is a leading professional services company. It's a consulting firm providing a broad range of services and solutions in strategy, technology, operations, etc. Of course, needless to say that Deepika is also a full-fledged Gallup-Certified strengths coach now. And what has been interesting is that she's been leveraging upon this certification to coach professionals within the organization. More than that, I think one of my earlier discussions with Deepika, she did intend, even when the course was going on, to deploy the idea of strengths with her team first. And we've had a chance to catch up right before this, and she says she's made some headway in that. So it's a first-hand experience, and we're hoping to understand from her today how is it like to develop sort of an ecosystem of strength in an organization as large as Accenture. It's with more than 300,000 employees worldwide, so it's a huge thing. So welcome, Deepika. Let's start by getting to know you a little better in terms of your strengths. What are your top 5?
Thank you, Pooja, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who's joined in from all over the world. And thank you for this opportunity. Can you hear me clearly?
We can indeed.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, a big thank you to Pooja and Vikas, who helped me go through the certification early this year, and I think it's been a great journey throughout. And my top 5, Pooja, has been responsibility, arranger, maximizer, woo, and includer. And those are my top 5 to answer your question.
Tell me a little bit about the journey, Deepika. I remember, even when we were going through the course, you were very, very intrigued with the idea, and especially for yourself. So I know you had a lot of questions around some of your own themes as well. So how is that journey with you from a more personal front of understanding your talents a little bit better, and how has that played out for you ever since you did the thing?
Yeah, I think it's been a great journey. It's a journey of self-awareness, and I would clearly say that I'm still a student in terms of coaching, essentially, and I'm learning each day as I'm going through this journey. But I think, as you mentioned rightly, that I've been a true believer of strengths right from my beginning of my career. Actually, I think what Gallup has done is put a science behind my individual belief of the fact that there is a lot of merit in using your strengths all the time. In fact, personally, if you ask me, even before I went through the certification, there have been years where I have truly worked with my strengths and have been very successful. And there have been years when I have worked on my weaknesses and trying to harness them more and have not been so successful. So I've really believed in the strengths journey for a very long time. And if I back in one of the organizations when I started to be a leader in my first few jobs, one of the things one of my leader always told me is that when you're looking at development plans, he said while you work on the weaknesses, but I think it's very important as you list down your top three, you should look at two of your strengths rather than weaknesses. And I think that stayed with me for a very long time till I went through the coaching right in the beginning of this year. And I think truly I have experienced it in my life and truly got a lot of benefits out of this entire thing. But as I went through this formally through the training and then the certification and the coaching, I started to use that more effectively in my day-to-day life. For example, I realized that some of the things which I used to do very unconsciously, like, whenever I would get into a team meeting, I would typically like to get all my people included, and I would, really wanted to get the point of view of each one of them so that they are feeling a part of the team and get their ideas. And I realized that, when I went through my top five, I was an includer. And it really reinforced the fact that, something which was coming to me very unconsciously truly is my strength, which I am trying to now leverage more effectively and more consciously. And that's one clear, area which I have, got through the entire exercise. The other big revelation for me was also to look at my edges. Very interestingly, responsibility happens to be my number one strength. And I realized that, while responsibility gives me a lot of positives where I know my team, my colleagues, and my even family members have always told me that I'm a fairly loyal and takes a lot of ownership in whatever I do. But I realized, and that's something which is ingrained in me. But I realized there was an edge to it as well. As I was dealing with my team, I used to get extra irritated if things were not happening the way I wanted to be, or they were not happening as per what I wanted it to be happening or within the timelines. So I realized that there were edges at times in which could be very frustrating for the other person. And truly that, uncovering myself through this strengths journey has helped me to look at some of my edges too and be conscious about those, be cognizant that what impact it could have on my team members, my family, my peers, my seniors. So I think that's something which has really, really helped me as we go along. The third thing which has helped me is that, some of the interplays, for example, in my top five, I have maximizer and responsibility. And I did realize that earlier when I used to take on a task, I would want to do very different things, all the time wanting to take up ownership and wanting to do many, many different things. But I think I do realize that, while there are importance of doing everything right, but it's also about doing right things, and that's something which has been very, very positive from my career standpoint, that, not picking up every battle you have. And, my maximizer, if I start to play it on, picking up the right battles for myself, looking at what needs to be worked upon as an individual, and, really then be a successful professional. So truly, it's really helped me. And as I said, that I'm learning in the process as I'm going through it.
And it's so obvious in what you're saying that it's really, you've actually thought it through as to how it has panned out for you, and that's actually very inspiring for even to me listening to you speak like that. And the one thing that I hear very, very often, of course, you've sort of spoken about a lot many other things also, is that edge part that you spoke. A lot of times things that we struggle with, we think it's a weakness and we try to focus on that, and the minute we're able to see it with a different lens, that it's coming to us because of a certain talent we have and all we need to do is regulate it a little bit, that itself is so encouraging for most people to get over a lot of hurdles that they may have been struggling with. So thank you for that. Deepika, tell me a little bit about now your journey as a strengths coach. So post the certification, etc., and you went back in the organization, and tell me a little bit about that journey. How has that panned out for you?
So Pooja, I think it's been an excellent journey, and let me share with the fact that I didn't start with the organization. So when I went
Okay.
through the training, and as part of the coaching exercise, you were supposed to be doing your 6 coaching sessions. In fact, the first session I did was with my son. Okay, and incidentally,
Mm.
I thought it's a safe territory. I shouldn't go typically wrong, and I should probably practice a little bit before I use it with an
Mm.
unfamiliar zone. So now it was very interesting. One weekend I sat with him and I said, "You must take your top 5," and as he went through this exercise, I realized that some of his areas, like he tended to be strategic, deliberative, maximize the kind of a human being, and he's also fairly related individualization. Those are top 5 strengths for him. And I realized as a parent, some of the things I realized about him, sometimes in the family. So he's in college, so he's quite grown
Mm.
up. So he's in
Mm.
college, and I realized that sometimes in the family, some of the decisions we was taking were very, very thought through. I was amazed at times. Sometimes when there was a tough decision in the family, and I would go to him generally, and he would quickly think through alternatives, pros and cons. And I realized that when I went through the strength finder with him, I realized that probably it was his deliberative and his strategic aspects which were really playing very quickly in his mind, and he was able to take some very, very quick decisions. Though deliberative is a little slow, but from a strategic standpoint, he could really think through the pros and cons. The other big thing I realized as a parent, sometimes I would push him to be a part of social gatherings, be part of larger groups. But I realized that he had a very small set of very, very close family friends, or some family ties were very strong, and some very close friends which he had grown up together with. And I realized that probably he's a person who may not be too good with large crowds, something like, probably my Wu was playing in, and as a coach I realized. And whereas he was coming really from his relator or individualization kind of style. And as a parent, I think it got me a great understanding of him as a person. And today, when I deal with him and when he takes certain decisions, I'm able to understand where he's coming from. And that has
I
been
have
a
a quick
great,
question around that, Deepika.
yeah.
That was, I mean, and I'm intrigued because, I'm a parent myself, and it's always nice to see from a parent's perspective what value did that add. Tell me a little bit, did you ask him about his perspective on this whole thing? Because, working with youngsters is a different ball game. So when you're talking to a 19, 20-year-old, and here you are telling them about what they're good at and what they're naturally talented at, what was his reaction like, and how has he been able to sort of take that forward a little bit?
Yeah, I think he first of all he related with it. I think that's been a aha moment for quite a few, even my team members when I've taken them through. But for my son, it was a great aha moment, and specifically the themes like strategic and deliberative. He actually truly believed in that, and he said that probably when he started, I helped him think through some of the scenarios and some of the decisions he's taken till now in his life. He truly believed in that, and what I continue to do is remind him sometimes about his strengths. So it is not a one time exercise, but as a family, when some of the decisions or some of the conversations we have, I continue to remind him on some of these areas. And I think he completely resonated with some of the areas. He was truly excited that I would say that it added to his self confidence a lot, and he started to feel more comfortable with himself. And he truly started to get a lot of insights about him. I think more work is required. I left it at about 2-3 conversations, but since it's there in the back of my mind, in my day-to-day communication, where I think some of this needs to be reinforced, I continue to do that. But from him, I think it added the zing, a little bit of a zing in terms of getting his self-confidence up, and truly believed and getting to understand himself a little more. So that I clearly can say for my son.
Mm.
Going to my team, I think it's been an exciting journey too. And I think the next thing which I did was doing again this entire strength finder with my team overall. And I made them. We did a group session. We also did individual coaching sessions, and I can clearly say that as a leader, it's helped me to understand my team better. It has also helped me my team members understanding me better. So where I'm coming from. I'm able to leverage some of the unique talents. I've been able to integrate some of our new joiners in the team because, I had during the course of last few months, I had quite a few new joiners coming into my team. And it's helped me in a lot of that as we went along, in terms of getting to understand my team, work on their future plans, look at their aspirations, look at their strengths, and work with our lot of aspects of the team, whether it was team goals, whether it was about getting them to use their strengths more actively in the projects which they were doing. I think it's clearly helped me as being a more effective leader. Now the team has to comment, but I think the journey has started and more work is required, but yet I truly feel far more confident, and I really understand my team, where they're coming from today. And every conversation therefore becomes more productive as we've gone along through this journey.
So that's a good starting point for a team, and I know you've had several interactions. So my next question, Deepika, for you was, of course, as a manager, you've been able to get better insight into the team members' talents and how they play out and prioritization and all of that. How has the interplay of talents happened between the team members? Have you seen some sort of a difference in the way they're interacting with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think it's worked very well. I'll give you a case of some new joiners in the team, and and one of my new joiners. So I think 2-3 things I would like to call out here. One is that so one of the new joiner, clearly, she's been with us for about 4 months, and she came in, and we did the strength finder with her, and after 4 months, in fact, I was having an interaction with her last week, and one of the things which she came up was the fact that while she's learned, she really enjoyed her first few months. She likes the work, she likes the nature of job which she's doing, and what she was getting little bogged down at this stage, and 4 months into the system, she was getting bogged down with a lot of work, a lot of team pressures. She probably was getting little, I could sense a little bit of frustration in her. Her engagement levels were dropping a bit, and I realized that when I started to look at her top 5, I realized that she was a learner, ideation, a responsibility. So while her responsibility was helping her go a mile longer, and she was taking on much more as a responsibility, but I realized that what was missing was that while first 4 months were very exciting because she was learning new things, and now when she got comfortable in her job, her learner had stopped to play a bit, and her ability to understand some of the issues with the team, where her ability to understand her team members better through a relator was not being leveraged to the extent she should have been. So one of the things which I helped her think through was that can she start to leverage some of her related types to understand the team better and get to understand where they're coming from. So I think that interplay with her own smaller team definitely helped her, and it was clearly a aha moment in where she started to see that how she can continue to build on her learner as well as the relator, and use those strengths to really get to the next level in terms of her goals. But one interesting interplay which I saw was that another newcomer who has high in analytics, and one of the team member commented in one of the team meetings saying, now I know where this person is coming from. Every time this person talks about data, it really excites him. There is something about him. He starts to ask very relevant questions, which I cannot do. That was her comment, because she realized that probably analytical was a very lesser talent for her, and whereas this gentleman would come in with analytics was a top 5. And the team has started to come closer to understand each other's top 5. How do we leverage that? How do you leverage that more effectively to be a better team? So whenever we get into a team meeting, so when it comes to numbers, I know that there are 2 or 3 of my team members who are very good with analytics or strategic, and they're thinking through. And probably they are the ones who ask those relevant questions, and where some others could take a back seat. Interestingly enough, in my team, I also sometimes when it comes to stakeholders, going to stakeholders, and there are times when stakeholders are probably high on certain, for example, I have a stakeholder where high on analytics. Now, one is that we can continue to be working with people who would struggle with some of the numbers, but if we can leverage some of our analytical and strategic players to get to think through some of the questions this analytical stakeholder will come across with, it has helped to get more productivity from the team standpoint. So I think the team has started to use and understand each other better, get to understand, and probably I think labeling is not the right word, but really clearly, truly understand each other's strengths, see how it can be helping the team to be far more productive than it was probably.
Yeah, I think a great example. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting journey, and it's helped me a lot to manage my team, and I can give you a few more examples as we go along.
Yeah. So I was just about to say that's a great example of, when we talk about strengths-based development or strengths performance coaching, we start with the idea of name it, claim it, aim it. And I think what you've been doing right now with your team is in fact all three of those things, in which now you're probably the team is utilizing their talents more and more to leverage each other a little bit better. So
Yeah.
very good, I mean, very inspiring example again. So Deepika, I'm just curious from a coach's standpoint, and there'll be some coaches out there listening. Um, are there any tools that you found to be exceedingly useful in helping you at least drive this journey in an organizational setting? Now, it's different when it comes to individuals, but things sort of get a little bit different when it comes to an organizational setting. So, any tools that you found particularly that you've been able to deploy very effectively in the way you've sort of gone through this journey?
Yeah, I think from a large organization like Accenture, we do a lot of group training and group coaching sessions. So I think some of the presentations and I think there's, while all reports are very useful, but I particularly found the strength insights and action planning report very relevant because, a lot of times there are questions in a lot of employees' mind that file, okay, great, I've got to understand what I'm good with, but how am I going to be leveraging it in my workplace, or how am I going to be using it? Because that's a big question in people's mind. And sometimes as in group coaching session, it's difficult to actually sit with individuals at times, especially training sessions, I would say. But they are able to leverage some of those reports, which also gives you some good quick tips on action planning, what kind of areas you could leverage upon, and start to use it in terms of aiming your some of your strengths. So I think that's one particular report which has helped me a lot. The other I'm fan of is the love, what the love,
Love,
crazy, and
crazy,
the envy.
envy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that report is very, very interesting because it helps you to understand yourself better, get close partnerships going. It also leads in very well into team grid because once you have your partnerships going, then how a team grid can be then used to leverage each other's domains well, and how then therefore you can be effective as a team. To me, those three have really worked for the teams which I have been, and it's worked for me to understand my team better. Also, especially when it came to team training sessions, some of the interview sheets which we continue to use as a guide to ask and interview the supervisors to understand what his views or her views in terms of goals, in terms of what he or she thinks about the team's strengths, what are the areas which he's challenged with. That template has truly helped me to prepare for those sessions better and make it far more focused. So these 3-4 tools I've used more often than others, but I think it's general interaction with the team and getting them to understand and get those aha moments going and see, yeah, this is where I can start to leverage. And aiming aspect has worked best for me, where then they can start to utilize some of that in their day-to-day work scenarios.
Great. So I guess my next question to you, Deepika, and I'm getting so many great insights from you that I just can't help myself to ask you this. Is that one thing is that once you've done your certification, you start doing your coaching conversations, and then if you see something good come out of it, it sort of goes on and takes a life of its own. But in an organization as big as yours, do you have any plans of the continuity part of it? How do you plan to keep it visible? Because it's almost like a language of its own, right? If people are talking about talents, and like you said, analytical, it just pops up, a face pops up now. So how do you do that even within your own team to have that level of continuity or visibility, even though you may not be having strengths-based discussions every day?
Yeah, I can't divulge plans, but as an organization, we are definitely getting to strengths journey in a big way. But from a team standpoint, how the continuity aspect would be the fact that I've started to integrate this with my day-to-day tools of performance management or doing team reviews. And for example, whenever I'm having any discussions on development planning or career discussions, I start to look at where the person is coming from, what his goals and aspirations are, what his talents are, and started to use some of that to discuss his immediate or future career plan. So that's something which definitely is working well. Also, like at this point of time, we do a lot of goal setting and all. So it's helped me to figure out that when I'm setting up goals, can I start to leverage his or her strengths to get to our team goals. So and there's a very interesting example which comes my way here. So one of my team member, he's old timer with me, and he's been working with me for about 3 years now, and I realized that he was. He's in a stage where he's set for growth for next level, and he's also sometimes so his discussion with me was around the fact that while I'm enjoying my work, but sometimes gets very transactional. What I'm able to do in my personal life, I'm not able to bring in those areas in my professional life. In personal life, he's a person who typically would do be a part of NGO, do sort of social interactions. He's joined some of those forums, and when I looked at his strengths, I realized that his top 5 had futuristic and ideation. And I realized that this gentleman was not able to start to use some of its futuristic and ideation, because the job was we handle large scale delivery organizations, so sometimes it gets really transactional in nature, and it's very routine sometimes, and that excitement started to miss out somewhere, and probably what he was able to leverage in his personal life couldn't be brought into his professional life. And so when we started to use some of the goal setting aspect this year, I ensured that some of the things like his ability to think through future gets integrated in some of the projects which I handed over. Not that his goals changed, but how he was supposed to attain his goals changed a bit. It's not about the fact that the goals need to change, but how is the aspect which I changed and said, can you do something interesting in that project? Can you bring in your futuristic element, or bring in new ideas to get that? And I truly saw that it brought in a lot of energy in him, to be able to work that with a new zest and zeal, because I think some of his strengths started to play up there, and that's how started to use in a day-to-day way. And whenever we now have interesting discussions, that's the time when I started to ask him, oh, have you applied some of the new ideas to this, or are you working on where this project will go in, and what are those new things which you are working on? So I think that kind of conversation helps me to reinforce some of those areas and to make it a more continuous cycle rather than just leaving it at one level and then not taking it to the next level. So that's clearly helping, and truly helping that individual to be far more motivated, engaged, and really performing to his optimum, I would say, and that's helping him as well as the team overall to meet its goals and excess. And that's exactly what we are trying to do, even as an organization wide, that how we can link it up to an individual and then take it to the next level from an organizational standpoint.
Yeah. Even from a role standpoint, Deepika, I mean, just the fact that now that you've done it for your own team and you have so much conviction around the process, do you think it's going to be simpler for you to also speak with other stakeholders and letting them know the benefits of a strengths-based development approach and help them sort of jump onto the bandwagon sort of a thing?
Absolutely. I do some of the coaching sessions as team building sessions for some of the other of my colleagues and stakeholders, and I've started to see that a lot of people are coming now with starting with, say, team training and then getting into individual coaching. I did a training session where we addressed about 50-60 people together. When they got to understand the basic concepts, I found that there was a far more interest to take it to the next level. They found that there were questions around the fact that wow, this is my strength area, now how do I take it to the next level? So I do see that once some of the success stories you can talk about talk about your own success stories, you are far more you're able to influence some of the other stakeholders within the organization to see that it's worked for you and it can work for you as a team as well, or an individual. So I truly believe that as a coach, I think I do use a lot of personal stories, and that has really helped me to use and take and get people influenced about why and what are the merits of probably using the strength-based journey.
Absolutely. Great. Jim, do we have any questions from the chat room?
Yeah, there was one question around with your top 5 having both responsibility and woo in your top 5. Now, I take a little exception to that because I have woo very high, and they're making the assumption that woo people can't have responsibility. But we want to hear from you on that. As you deal with both responsibility and woo with your teams, how do those two come together? How do they dynamically come together, and what does that look like for you?
Interesting question. Who happens to be my favorite theme too, and I truly enjoy it. And some people call me a woo, it's a very interesting theme. And a lot of people are intrigued of what woo actually means. And a lot of people have asked me, what does woo mean? So winning over others. I think responsibility and woo have really come together for me because I'm a person who generally enjoys a lot of social interactions, both in my personal and professional life. So getting to network a lot and use that in my personal and professional life both. And I would say more in my personal life because if you ask me what I'll be doing over the weekend, I love to socialize, do some kind of social work at some point of time. But I think the way it's come together is responsibility helps me to get deeper into my woo. So one of the things which I did realize, and as I went through the Strength Finder, is that am I leveraging my woo enough? Am I taking it to the next level? So sometimes the woo is left at very, very superficial stage. It is left to generally interacting and saying hi and bye type of relationship. But when it comes to responsibility, it helps me to get my relationships more deeper for myself and really work effectively with some of my relationships. So what I've tried to do over the last few months when I realized that these two are really my top 5 is start to take an active interest in my good networks. I've tried to connect with some of my old friends, started to take that as to the next level, and I've started to use those interplays more effectively to be more effective in my one is in my work scenario because I'm able to connect with a lot of people within the organization and therefore get my team to be more effective because I can make the first connect and then my team can follow up, and some of my relator or my people in the team who are going good in deep relationships has helped me to take the journey forward. At the same time, I'm taking my woo to be more responsible and using woo and responsibility together to see how I can take my relationships to a deeper level. And that's how I'm using the two themes together.
Yeah, I like how you separated those because these themes are inherently neutral, and when they come together, they begin to influence the other. I think sometimes we think that there are, because of our own biases, those pairs can be opposites, and we maybe see them that way, but it's great to hear from you. How does your maximizer play into that? I mean, I would think too, right? Your maximizer would play into that. How does that play in with the teams that you manage or that you work with?
So maximizer helps me to prioritize a bit. It also helps me to identify good talent. I think it's helped me to a great extent in my coaching. Sorry, I've been.
You're fine. You made it all the way this far without hitting it. Good job. That's tough for a woo.
So it's helped me in my coaching, because I think maximizer also truly believes in the strengths of the individual. Clearly helped me to help me understand and work with people's strengths. I think that's the top, I would say, for my maximizer. I truly can look at what's good with an individual and the positive side of the individual, the strengths of the individual, and clearly maximizer is helping me to get best of my team and clearly understand them better through their strengths. And also the other thing which I mentioned in the beginning of the discussion was the fact that it's also helped me to prioritize a bit, because I responsible and maximizer coming together. Sometimes I take on more than what I'm expected to do. So maximizer helps me to really sieve through some of that and take on what's more important and more critical. So help me prioritize a lot as well. So I think it's helping me both in my coaching as well as ability to understand my team's strengths and also take in some of the areas of prioritization. Those are the ways it's helped me, and those interplays have helped me.
Yeah, no, those are some great answers, and I appreciate that insight. JB out there had asked, has there been much work done on knowing which size of groups worked best when you have folks sharing their top 5? So is it best, have you found it best one-on-one in groups of 2 to 10 or 10 or larger. Have you seen in the work that you're doing any more success with smaller groups than larger groups when you're getting them together for those strengths interventions?
So I think when it talks about giving them and sharing the concepts bit, I think the group doesn't really matter. I've done that between 40 and 50 as well. And but when it comes to individual coaching and taking it to the next level, then smaller groups certainly have worked. So concepts you could share with helping them to uncover what the strengths is all about, distinguishing between strengths, talents, and all the aspects of simple coaching, meaning simple concepts of strengths that you can do with larger groups. But when it comes to effectively coaching discussions, it cannot be more than about 8 to 10 people, because then you have to get into the next level of depth, which doesn't come through in larger groups. So that's been my experience. So my typical answer to that would be that go with larger groups when it comes to sharing concepts, and then go into more of one-on-one discussion for people who are interested to take it to the next level. So I've worked in both the groups, and for me both the groups have worked effectively. And with my team, it was much smaller team, so it worked very effectively because I could then take it on one-on-one. But I did another team where the group size was as large as about 50 to 60 people, and I could share the concepts, but there were quite a few in that group who came back and said, now what next? So that's where that the coaching discussion needs to be taken in smaller groups.
It kind of comes down to scalability sometimes too, right? What can you practically get done and get through? What about the naysayers? We get this question a lot. Folks who give resistance right up front. How have you been handling that? We get probably maybe 1 in 10 who's kind of skeptical at first. How have you been handling that?
I think I've not really come across too many skeptical people, but I've come across a lot of people when it came to coaching, and when I went through the larger session, focusing a lot on there's lesser talents. There's always that question about I've got this bottom 5. What do I do with them? I'm just too concerned, and especially I've seen specifically with strategic. When it falls into the bottom 34, people tend to get worried, especially at the leadership level. No, I need to be a leader, and therefore I need to be strategic. And very interestingly, that's an area which a lot of people get aha when they see it in top 5. Wow, I've had it all because I've got strategic in my top 5. So I've seen both sides, but I think the biggest skepticism or area of concern which I've seen is till when they see the report for the first time is they think, oh, now I'm good with these. Now there are areas which I need to work on. And I think one of the things which has really helped me a lot is how do you really be aware of your areas of lesser talents, but how do you counter it with some of your strengths? That's something which clearly has something which I've guided, coached, helped them to uncover that it doesn't really matter, that you might be having strategic in your bottom 5. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a team member of mine, and she said, I'm in bottom 5. What do I do? And she had this woo and relator and all kinds of people skills in the top 5. And I said, why you work so well in cross-functional teams? There's nothing to worry about. You are just talking about the fact that are there alternative patterns? Are there ways in alternative views you could take on and use your top 5, which is really people-oriented skills which you have. So I think that has been one of the biggest area which I have always come across is that have gotten the bottom 5, 7. How do I really? I'm worried that my analytical is the lowest or my strategic is the lowest, and my role really demands it needs to be worked upon. And how to really counter that.
And Deepika, we often laugh about it. I think the bulk of our role sometimes is just to defy gravity. Just tell people, go to the top 5, go to the top 5. It just somehow, it's one of those things that we as coaches need to do all the time. Yeah.
Right.
We begin to look at this like there's a certain set of themes that you have to be a leader. And I'm with you that I'm this woo communication arranger that leads from the front, right? That's what I do, and I don't fall into those typical categories of leadership, and yet I'm using that strong woo, that strong communication, the strong arranger to do what we're doing here, right? That's part of that exercise that exists. What about when have you come across where the leadership doesn't support it? Because sometimes that's really hard on our coaches when they're trying to do this, and the top leadership is kind of wishy-washy or negative against strengths. Have you run into that yet?
Not really. And thankfully, as I said, that as an organization, we are fairly positive about it, and therefore that leadership buy-in is definitely there. I would say that a lot of times, a lot of people do face that, but at least within my organization, I can clearly see that there is a complete leadership buy-in. So that thankfully, I haven't faced that in my organization. Yes, there is a bit of hesitancy till the person actually uncovers his or her report and goes through it, but I haven't really come across too much of that. Thankfully, it's a great organization where people are fairly supportive and believe in the philosophy.
And then kind of one final question from the chat room. How do you plan to sustain it, right? It's one thing to do these and have a few coaching sessions and get it rolling, but as you think of sustainability in the organization, what are a few tips or a few things you're planning to do to keep it rolling?
Yeah. I think sustainability is the biggest question because a lot of times this can lose steam, if you are not reminded yourself about it. And I think a few things which we are doing more effectively, as I was mentioning earlier, is integrating with the processes and some of the HR processes within the organizations. That's one good way to sustain it. Making it a common language within the team, starting to make a journey about really complementing each other on where strength is seen in action. Maybe in the smaller team when a person has used his top five, really calling it out and said this is where you used it very well and this worked for you. Using that as kind of a habit within the team so that they are able to use that on a day-to-day basis. But I think integrating it with your day-to-day working is how you can sustain it. If you keep it as a separate exercise, which is like any other tool which you've done once in lifetime and forgotten about it, probably it loses meaning. And therefore it has to be called out from. It has to be reminded sometimes to your own self as to your team, and it has to be integrated with your day-to-day working, and that will be my guidance, and my experience, because I've often seen that if you do not talk about some of this very actively and this language is not spoken about, you can easily keep it in the back of your mind and lose track of some of this, and therefore integrating with your day-to-day language and using and recognizing some of this on a day-to-day basis, referring into your day-to-day conversations in your team reviews, or making it a part of your team meetings, maybe one discussion point, some of those techniques, and as I mentioned, integrating with the larger HR system, and if you can revisit some of this from time to time on the periodicity, it really helps to reinforce. And maybe picking up one area. My guidance to my coaches is always the fact that can you pick up one area, one strength which you want to work and take to the next level, and a follow-up mechanism really helps to take it to the next level. And that's how you can sustain it, picking up one at a time and taking it to the next level.
Okay, I said that was the last question, but I lied. One more question for you. And I think it's really important. Dee popped in and said, "What kind of when you're doing these interventions, what kind of changes are you seeing?" I think it's really important. Oftentimes we get stuck in the name it and name it and name it phase, is what I call it, where we talk a lot about it. But that aiming phase, are you seeing change in individuals?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, that I see a definite. I've started to see, actually, I wouldn't say that, but I've started to see higher productivity, higher engagement. Those two clearly I've started to visibly see, at least in my smaller team, to be able to, contribute to a project far more actively, to be far more engaged, because, the minute you remind individual and you start to work through their goals, clearly that's one big change which I'm seeing, and a positive orientation overall. Not working with just the negativity. It's just the positivity it brings to the discussions. I clearly see that as a big change, because that helps to bring everything in a very, very positive direction. Doesn't mean that you don't talk about negatives. It doesn't mean that goals are compromised on, but dealing with everything in a positive way. And that's something, those are 2-3 changes I've clearly started to see within the team, far more engagement, little more, definitely higher productivity, working on the projects which they love to, and sometimes trying to make some career choices, starting to do something different. For example, one of my team member had developer as one of the areas which she wanted to work on, and she was part of the training team, yet not facilitating. And I really encouraged her to start to use some of that trait in her, managing a team member, starting to take up more training sessions. And I find her far more satisfied and engaged at workplace when you started to, figure out what can I do to, take my strength to the next level, or can I use one of my strengths and truly enjoy what I do. So that's clearly some of the results I've started to see.
Great, Deepika. Thank you so much for that. It's been such a delight talking with you today. So much of work you've done, your insights around this, your clarity around this, your conviction around the idea of strengths. I mean, all of it has been just very, very inspiring. And I'm sure not only for me, but for everybody, whether it be independent coaches or people who are trying to drive this in larger organizations. I think what you've shared was very, very insightful, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, Jim.
You bet, Hayden, and I'll say thank you as a fellow woo. Thanks for standing up for us woos in that, and I appreciate it. When we first started off, before we started the program, you thought, "Oh, I won't have much to say," and I had no doubt in my mind, as a woo, you would rise up and say that as well. So thanks for coming on today. I want to remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. You can drop those in an email to us, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all the past ones, including the links to our Facebook group and our YouTube page. Lots of conversation going on there in our Facebook group. The links to that are at the coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you have an idea for a blog post to our coach's blog, we'd like to hear that, and we're taking applications for it as well. Send us that email, and in the subject line, put guest blogger in there, and we'll put you in the ring for consideration as well. Don't forget, we have Android and iPhone apps available for you. If you have trouble remembering what your top 5 are, it's a great resource to download that, log in, and your top 5 will always be available at your fingertips. Pooja, do we have any courses coming up there? Have we announced our 2016 courses?
We haven't published those yet, but yeah, there is one still happening in 2015 in December in Delhi. So we're doing an accelerated strengths coaching course in Delhi the week of December 14th.
And there's still time?
That's nice.
There's still
yes,
time?
Yes, there is time. There's still time to register. So if anyone's interested or anyone you know is interested, yes, Jim, we want you here.
I'm coming.
Yeah.
I get one a year, and so maybe that's the one I'll take. I don't think they'll go with that, but it's worth saying on air. We want to thank everyone for joining us, and if you enjoyed this, we'd ask you to please share it. This link actually will be up, this program will be up for the next week here on the live link. If you want to share coaching.gallup.com/live, and folks can watch it, we'd love to have you do that. And with that, we'll look forward to the next call to coach, and with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.